Hey guys, the Wolf Den here, and today we'll be taking a look at the plastic Contemptor Dreadnought for games of Warhammer the Horus Heresy and the Age of Darkness. We'll be starting by taking a look at the lore surrounding this powerful war machines in the Warhammer 40k universe, as well as taking a look at the history of the Contemptor Dreadnought model, followed by taking a closer look at the box, and its contents, as well as the finished model with some size comparisons, before I sum up my overall thoughts on this incredible model kit. Let's get into it. The traitors clipped my wings on Istvan. They broke my body and they left me to die. Little did I know that they gave me a gift to fight again. Stronger, faster. My talons can shred a man with a thought, and my weapons bring death at a glance should I will it. Let them come. I wish to thank them with a slow death. Attributed to ancient Severo. Raven Guard Contemptor Dreadnought. The mighty Contemptor Dreadnought is one of the numerous patterns of dreadnoughts that have been fielded by the Space Marines and the forces of the Imperium of Man since its very birth. Contemptor pattern dreadnoughts, much like the common Castaferum patterns, are armored combat walkers housing the still conscious and alive remains of a Space Marine hero, allowing them to fight again and serve even after their deaths of their mortal bodies. Having famously fought on the countless battlefields of the Great Crusade, and later the Horus Heresy itself, the Contemptor pattern dreadnought, which at the time of these conflicts was a newer and more readily made pattern of walker compared to the more boxedy Castaferum patterns, were a common sight among all of the Space Marine legions, as well as the forces under the Emperor such as his custodians. Contemptor dreadnoughts stand many times the height of a man, and even tower over their Space Marine brothers clad in power armor, including those clad in Terminator armor. At the heart of each dreadnought lies a powerful automatic arc reactor, which not only powers the walker itself and its staggering array of weapon systems, but it allows for a greater degree of control and combat speed compared to other similar machines. This technology is jealously guarded by the Mechanicum, with the powerful systems of each Contemptor having a similar nature and function to those found among the Legio Cybernetica and the various robots of Mars. For defense, the Contemptor Dreadnought mounts a system that utilizes a system of automantic shielding, projects a powerful energy field to protect the walker from harm. The Contemptor Dreadnought was one of the most versatile weapons platforms available to the forces of the Space Marines and the Imperium. The Contemptor chassis could mount up to 2 powerful weapon systems, one on each arm as well as one weapon system on the top of the chassis itself. These weapons include, which were often mounted on the arms, Gravis autocannons, conversion beamers, Gravis bolt cannons, Gravis las cannons, Gravis melta cannons, Gravis plasma cannons, Volkite dual culverines, or the powerful Kiri's assault cannons. Additionally, a Contemptor Dreadnought may take up to 2 Gravis power fists or chain fists for cracking open enemy vehicles or bunkers, being able to take a combi bolter, plasma blaster, graviton gun, a heavy flamer, or a melta-gun. Finally, the top of the hull can mount a havoc launcher for additional firepower, among other auxiliary systems to increase the Contemptor's potency in battle. This wide array of offensive weapons, combined with the Dreadnought's shielding, make it a mainstay among the Imperium's forces during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, with many legions having customized their variants of these venerable walkers to suit their preferences in both combat style and aesthetic taste. These subtypes, too numerous to list here, range simply from having been styled to the preferences of each legion in appearance, to having dedicated alternate weapon systems and little understood equipment outside of their parent legions, as they were often seen in numerous combat zones, engaging the enemy forces on their own terms. The Contemptor Dreadnought has had a long model history and numerous variations and different patterns over the courses of Games Workshop's and Forge World's history. I could honestly spend all day talking about the different makes, models, Legion-specific, and different releases for the Contemptor, as it has had numerous variations throughout the years. But for the sake of simplicity, we'll be covering the major releases as they happened, in regards to the Contemptor Dreadnought's many forms. The Contemptor Dreadnought's first model appearance was in 1987, released under the lead Imperial Dreadnoughts tagline. Released with the Furibundus pattern and Deredeo class Dreadnoughts, the Contemptor in its original form was a very squat, very round all-metal kit that shared few, if any, design cues with the more modern appearance of the Contemptor Dreadnought. These Dreadnoughts were given the nickname of, strangely enough, as being called Chuck, and could be armed with a variety of weapons, including a missile launcher, las cannon, or single and double bolters attached to each arm, though the trend of the weapon systems being arm-mounted would continue to later releases. The Contemptor then vanished from the history pages of Warhammer lore and memory for a very long time, as the more prominent Castiferum, or Box Knot as it was called, chassis would soon become the dominant form of Dreadnought for armies of the Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines throughout a large portion of 40K's lifespan. This, however, would change. In 2012, the Contemptor Dreadnought returned to the scene fresh from the pages of Imperial Armor, The Badab War Part 2, and Apocalypse from 2011. The Contemptor Dreadnought, along with a slew of weapons, were released by Forge World. All resin kits and designed from the ground up, these opposing walkers came in 3 flavors: the ornate Relic Contemptor Dreadnought and 2 standard Contemptor Dreadnoughts, each one with their own styles and level of detail. The following years would see each individual Space Marine Legion, both loyalists and traitors alike, receive an entirely customized and personalized Contemptor Dreadnought specific to each Legion, featuring iconography, patterns, symbols, glyphs, totems, and more to represent the style of their parent legions. Each model was compatible with the resin Contemptor Dreadnought weapons which had released previously, allowing for different weapon options and loadouts to suit the taste of players and modelers alike. The Contemptor Dreadnought would see a new evolution in 2015, with the release of the Betrayal at Calth box set. Featuring the first of many plastic miniatures for the Horus Heresy, the Betrayal at Calth box came packaged with the first of its kind, a all-plastic Contemptor Dreadnought. Rather basic and not very ornate in its appearance, Games Workshop also released a video on how to modify this model to become compatible with the various Forge World weapon arms for even more loadout possibilities, using the plastic Contemptor Dreadnought as a base. Finally, and most recently, in 2022, saw the release of an all-new, all-plastic and multi-part Contemptor Dreadnought kit, which was released by Games Workshop. And this is the kit we'll be taking a look at today. Most of the Legion Contemptors have been discontinued. However, for a short time around 2022, during the initial release of this plastic Contemptor Dreadnought, the resin bodies of the original Legion Contemptors were released alongside the plastic kit, bundled together, allowing for a more posable and dynamic Legion Dreadnought, sharing the arms, limbs, and weapons, as well as the leg and lower torso of the plastic Contemptor Dreadnought, while the more ornate chest and body pieces, as well as the head, were to be replaced by the Forge World Legion Contemptor Dreadnoughts. These models are, however, sadly out of print as well, leaving us with only the plastic Contemptor Dreadnought in its all-new glory. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the 2022 Games Workshop Contemptor Dreadnought. So here we have the brand new Space Marine Contemptor Dreadnought for Games of the Horus Heresy set in the Age of Darkness. We have a beautiful diorama view of the Contemptor armed with a power fist, a Havoc launcher, and an assault cannon, all painted up in the colors of the Imperial Fists, as well as a second, larger view of the model armed with a conversion beamer. Flipping the box around, we have another view of the Contemptor Dreadnought, as well as 2 color scheme guides on how to paint your model in the livery of the Imperial Fists, as well as the Sons of Horus with 2 painting guides. There's also a very small cutaway diagram of the standard Horus Heresy vehicle upgrade decal sheet. And lastly, we have a large view of the different weapons and gear that your Contemptor Dreadnought can take. In addition to the previously mentioned Havoc launcher and Power Fists, which this kit contains 2 of, the Power Fists with inbuilt weapon choices, and the Assault Cannon. This kit also includes a Gravis autocannon, a Gravis plasma cannon, a conversion beam cannon, a Gravis melta cannon, a Volkite dual culverin, a Gravis bolt cannon, and finally a Gravis las cannon. This is in addition to the 2 Power Fists, the Kiri's assault cannon, and the Havoc missile launcher. This model has an absolutely staggering array of weapons, gear, and accessories, primarily the weapons, which are bundled on their own upgrade sprue. The sheer amount of weapons that you get with this kit is honestly incredible. Unlike the plastic Leviathan and the plastic Duradeo kits, which released alongside of this model, which made you choose a model setup with a specific loadout and require either buying another copy of the kit with the additional weapons that you needed, or purchasing an additional weapon upgrade frame to have all of the different weapon choices. However, this model has all of the weapon options, including optional in-Power Fist weapons and chain blades to make chain fists, all within this single box. I will be making a separate video explaining how to make these various weapon systems compatible throughout all of your Contemptor Dreadnoughts in your collection without the use of magnets in most cases. But without further ado, let's take a look at the contents of this box. So here we have the instructions for the plastic Contemptor Dreadnought. Pretty straightforward here. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that this is a very parts heavy build, so definitely take your time and make sure you follow the instructions carefully, and you won't have any problems putting this model together. The instructions are all numbered, which coincide with the parts numbers on the individual sprues, with no major errors or mistakes in assembly whatsoever as far as I can tell. Besides that, it's pretty much a standard Dreadnought assembly. Legs, torsos, arm, and accessories. If you've built a Dreadnought before, there's honestly nothing new here that will throw you off. Just make sure to go light on the glue applications because there is a lot of detail here, and if you overdo the glue, it tends to smear the detail. It is a rather simple process to make your Dreadnought modular without magnets to get all of the arm weapons without having to commit to use magnets and superglue. But I will be saving this for its own video and will be briefly covered later. Next, we have what was once the standard Space Marine Horus Heresy decal sheet. I've talked about this before, primarily that it's not much help for any other legions besides the Sons of Horus and Imperial Fists, but overall it's pretty okay for those who need it. Next, we have the first sprue, primarily the body pieces, leg pieces, and parts of the arms, as well as some of the smaller weapon systems. And you can see how detailed these parts are, even just on the sprues. Next, we have the second sprue, which primarily features the weapons and accessories and swappable optional parts for your model, including the Volkites, the Plasmas, the Assault Cannon, Chain Fists, and other parts. Finally, we have the last accessory and parts sprue featuring more weapons, including the shoulders, Gravis bolt cannon, las cannons, autocannons, and the Melta, among other accessories here. And lastly, we have the standard Games Workshop base. So let's take a look at the completed Contemptor Dreadnought and see how it stacks up with some size comparisons. And here we have the finished Contemptor Dreadnought for Games of the Horus Heresy set and the Age of Darkness. And honestly, I cannot say how much I love this model enough. It really looks incredible once it's done. It really captures the look of the old resin model kits without the headache of putting those models together. And it fits right in with a resin forge rolled Dreadnought collection, Heresy collection, or as a painted centerpiece model for a small army. This model is covered from head to toe in details, especially the torso, which can have one of several different torso plates, as well as several different heads and other decorative pieces, to really customize your model and make it your own. These include a chest piece with a sculpted Eye of Horus, a chest piece with an Imperial Eagle, and a chest piece that is completely blank, as well as the chest piece that I have selected for my model. And speaking of customization, this Dreadnought comes with so many weapons and accessories, like this Volkite here, which is a near identical copy of the old resin one from Forge World, as well as this autocannons, which seemingly blend into the styles of the old Forge World kit while modernizing them in modern plastic forms. Next, we have the Gravis Bolt Cannon, which is a bit different from the old Forge World bolter, which stacked the bolters vertically. This model, however, stacks them horizontally, though with a bit of cutting and reshaping, you could easily make them match the old pattern. Next, we have the gorgeous Conversion Beamer, which looks incredible in plastic and looks right out of the pages of a pulp sci-fi book. Followed by the Carries Assault Cannon. Be careful on the bottom support here when you cut this model out and put it together, as mine snapped because I was a bit too harsh cutting it out and I had to re-glue it. But if you're careful when you cut, you'll be fine and you shouldn't have any problems. Next, we have the Plasma Cannon, which looks large and imposing, which is followed by the Melt-A-Gun, which looks simple but is nearly identical replica to the old resin model. Followed by the last cannons and the torso-mounted Havoc Launcher, which is placed on top of the chassis. And finally, we have not one, but two Gravis Power Fists, which have a staggering amount of inbuilt weapons, including flamers, plasmas, bolters, gravity, or melt-a-guns, which can be placed inside the fists themselves. You also have a choice of either fingers or talons for each fist. However, sadly, if you choose the talons, the thumb will remain round, which would have been nice if Games Workshop had included clawed thumbs as well, but this is certainly not the end of the world, especially if you only need one, which you can use one of the fingers from the other kit to make a fully taloned Power Fist. Some quick-sized comparisons. First, we have the all-new, all-plastic Contemptor Dreadnought compared to its older cousin from the Calth box set that I painted and customized a few years ago. As you can see, the models are very similar in both stature and height, and look really good together, as you can see the models seamlessly blend in together in an army without looking like a sore thumb. They scale accurately together, and they look great together as part of a talon or as a centerpiece for an individual army or group. Next, we have a quick comparison between my Forge World Ultramarine Contemptor Dreadnought, which is the all-resin, all-decorative Ultramarines Legion-specific Dreadnought, which I have also revamped in a newer video. This is the older version of that model that I'm not very proud of. And as you can see, the all-new, all-plastic Dreadnought looks great next to the old Forge World sculpts as well, which strikes the perfect middle ground between the old, highly detailed resin kits, as well as the simpler Betrayal at Calth kit, together with all three models being of this roughly the same stature, with some slight variations here and there, but they really do look good together, especially as a part of a talon. And finally, we have some comparisons between the older Mark IV Space Marines from the Calth box, and as you can see, the new plastic Dreadnought absolutely towers over his power-armored brother, and despite the almost decade differences in release dates, they really go seamlessly well together. Next, we have the Dreadnought compared to the old plastic Cataphractii Terminators, which came also with the Calth box set. And as you can see, it scales excellently to even Terminator armor and hasn't been scaled out of proportion. Next, we have a quick look between a Deimos patterned Rhino, which we have looked at previously on the channel, compared to this Dreadnought. And both models scale excellently together and neither look too large or too small. And finally, we have the Contemptor Dreadnought compared to one of the older all-resin Forge World Sakaran battle tanks, which was painted by a friend of mine a few years ago who put it together for me as a gift. The models scale excellently together and are similarly detailed and look really good together as part of an army or as a force. And that will sum up the size comparisons. And without further ado, we'll get into my overall thoughts on this model, my experiences putting it together, and whether or not I would recommend it for your Horus Heresy armies. For the build category, I rate the new Contemptor Dreadnought a solid 5 out of 5. The build is fun and very engaging, and with the end result looking fantastic. The build is a bit parts heavy here and there, and in some spots it feels a bit excessive now and again, but it doesn't impact the build negatively in my opinion, especially after having done several resin Contemptor Dreadnoughts which are a pain to build. The build is enjoyable, but you'll need to pay attention to the instructions as you go along, so you can't entirely zone out while you put this model together. But if you go slow, pay attention to the instructions, and you'll end up with a solid and great looking and modular Contemptor Dreadnought for your armies. Looks. The new Contemptor Dreadnought gets another 5 out of 5 in the looks category. The model looks incredible once it's completed. It comes with tons of parts to really customize your model and really make it your own. It really allows you to customize it and make it match the rest of your army or legion of your choice. While it doesn't contain any legion-specific hard transfers, as this is a legion-agnostic kit, it does offer plenty of options in both weaponry and decorative parts to bring out whichever legion you choose to field this model with, and it fits right at home among both the plastic Celt Contemptor Dreadnoughts as well as the resin Forge World Dreadnoughts in appearance. Without any outside modification, you're able to get a nice looking model right out of the box. Material quality. The Contemptor Dreadnought scores a solid 5 out of 5 in the material quality category. Games Workshop monoplastic is some of the best in the business. I've had zero problems working with it, cutting, sanding, magnetizing, or doing anything of the sort. And it glues very well with either super glue or plastic glue. There are a few small delicate parts like on the conversion beamer and Kiri's assault cannon, so take care when you cut those bits out of the sprue as they can be delicate and prone to breaking, as well as any of these smaller detail parts, but overall you shouldn't have any problems if you cut carefully. Accessories. If I could give the Contemptor Dreadnought more than a 5 out of 5 for the accessories category, I certainly would, because it certainly deserves it. The Dreadnought comes with tons and tons of accessories, different fingers for the power fists, different weapons for the power fists, which you also get 2 of, weapons for both arms, accessories for the hull, different optional parts throughout the whole build, different head pieces, chest pieces, as well as other options. It's staggering amount of parts that you get in this kit, especially compared to the Deredeo and the Leviathan, which were stuck with single loadouts per box. This kit comes with honestly everything you could want out of a Legion agnostic Dreadnought kit in one neat package. And finally, for the instructions and decals category, I give the Contemptor Dreadnought a 5 out of 5. While the decals are rather poor for this kit, which I've talked about before and I'm certainly not going to overdo now, the instructions more than enough make up for this category. Everything is labeled correctly and matches the sprues perfectly, making for an easy and fun build with no major problems or errors as far as I can see. The only thing that would improve this model for this category would be a more generalized vehicle transfer sheet, but I've already covered that in my Deimos Pattern Rhino build. So, would I recommend the all-new, all-plastic Contemptor Dreadnought models for games of the Horus Heresy for your army? Absolutely, no question about it. This model is incredible, and I honestly can't stop talking about how great it is. And it's probably my favorite of all of the new plastic Horus Heresy models that I put together so far. The build is excellent, if not a bit part heavy, but as you're working on it, you really don't notice this. The sheer amount of accessories and decorative parts and pieces really allow you to customize your model however you want. The model is covered with details from its engines to its feet to its chassis. Every weapon is detailed perfectly, and outside of the heavy bolter are almost near perfect replications of the old classic Forge World weapons for their old Contemptor Dreadnoughts. For a plastic model of one of the most popular and numerous Dreadnoughts used in the Horus Heresy, This kit does everything I could ever want it to do and more. You can pose it in so many different ways and equip it with so many different weapon options that you couldn't possibly ask for more out of this kit. The sheer amount of weapons is incredible. It's wonderful to not have to buy any additional weapon packs to get all of the weapons outside of weapon duplicates other than the Power Fist. So if you're looking to shore up your Legion defenses or offensive power, this kit is definitely for you. And I would recommend it even if you're not even a fan of the Horus Heresy and you're looking to model a cool Dreadnought. And I would definitely recommend picking this kit up if it interests you because it won't disappoint.